Hello, I'm Mark Price. I'd like to talk to you today about focus. There was an older fella, a man, senior citizen, who was driving a brand new sports car down the highway very, very fast, about 80 or more miles an hour. And a California highway patrolman came up behind him and the man sped up. The highway patrolman turned the red lights on and the man went even faster, maybe over 100 miles an hour. And finally, he came to his senses and he stopped, and the highway patrolman got out and came to him and said, "I can't believe this. At your age, you're driving like that? It's late in the day. I'll tell you what, you give me an excuse I've never heard before for why you were driving so fast. I'll let you go. I won't write you a ticket." So this older man looked up at the officer and he says, "You know, years ago, my wife ran away with a highway patrolman. And I thought you were trying to bring her back to me." There you go, a good excuse. So anyway, not really. The gospel today is from Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 19. Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. Amen, I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or the smallest part of a letter will pass from the law, until all things have taken place. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys and teaches these commandments will be called greatest in the kingdom of heaven." The gospel of the Lord. So there you have it. Jesus is talking about our responsibility to follow the law. But what is the law? When he says the law, what's he referring to? Well, the law that existed was initially the law, the 10 Commandments given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai, who shared it with, of course, the Israelites, the Jewish people. Well, the Jewish people took those 10 Commandments of God and I guess kind of figured that God needed help in explaining them, that God needed addendums to his 10 Commandments. So they created and added over 600 more laws to God's 10. And by the time Jesus was there, he saw that people were not focusing on the purpose of God's law, and yet we're focusing on all these additional laws and making these additional laws more important than the underlying purpose of God's law. So why did God give us those laws in the first place? Do you think God gave us those laws because God needed them? Because God needed a set of commandments for him to follow, or for him to use as the great puppeteer to get us to dance? No. He gave us the laws because he loved us. He gave us the laws for the same reason he sent his son to this earth. He loved us. And he created us as people with free will. And he wanted to give us people with free will a set of guidelines. Not so that we're controlled by something, but so that we, using those guidelines, can grow in our love and our relationship with God. That's the purpose of the law. To get us to a place where we are on a daily basis growing in love and relationship with God. Sadly, churches that add all these additional laws, all these additional rules, usually they're designed to keep people more in line and grow in the relationship with the church, and not as much in keeping the focus on God. If in any way the laws and rules of the church take us away even for a moment in our growing in our love and relationship with God, because it tries to get us focusing on something man-made, then we've lost the entire message, the entire focus, the entire purpose of God giving us the laws in the first place. Well, Jesus was frustrated, and he says, "You're focused all on these man-made laws." He says, "I'm going to give you 2. And if you follow these 2, everything will fall into place. You will be obeying all the commandments if you follow these 2. Love God and love each other." That's it. But our modern churches who have followed Jesus for these last couple millennia have taken Jesus's 2 and created, for example, in the case of my church, 2,000 additional laws we call canon law. And again, the purpose of the law of God, the law that Jesus is reminding us of is to have us grow, give us guidelines to grow in love and relationship with God and in God through Christ. That's the sole purpose. And anything that detracts us, that takes us away from growing in that love and relationship with God is what Jesus was railing against. We have to get back in our lives to focusing on God's commandments, because God's commandments are made to build our relationship with Him and our relationship with Him through Christ. Now, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that in my studies for all my characters, for example, Francis of Assisi, in 1221, Francis was asked to create a set of rules for his order, the Friars Minor. And we know it as the Franciscans, but you may not know that the original name, and I think still the official name of his order, is the Friars Minor. Friars from the French frère, which means brother, and minor, because in Francis's day you had two kinds of people. Mayores, that's people with everything, and minores, people with nothing. So he named his order the Friars Minor, brothers with nothing. And so he was told he had to create a set of rules. And so he looked at the rules of the other orders that existed, for example, the Benedictines, and he rejected them. And he rejected them because he felt that the other orders were basing what they did and how they formed themselves on the teachings of the apostles in the Acts of the Apostles. And he said, no, I don't want to follow the apostles, I want to follow Jesus. So he followed in his walk of faith what Matthew taught, where Matthew is saying, I'm sending you with no sandals and no money, with just a walking stick, and I'm sending you as sheep unto the wolves. And that's how Francis perceived his order. So he wrote his rules of 1221. Well, they were rejected by Vatican. The Vatican said, no, these are too strict. You may be able to follow them, Francis, but you can't expect others to. So he drafted another set of rules in 1223, and they're known as the Rules of 1223. And I'm told that Francis used to say, I accept the rules of 1223, but I embrace the rules of 1221. So, if I may draw a parallel, we should accept the rules of our church. Whatever our denomination is, whatever our church teaches, we should accept their rules, but we should embrace the commandments of God. Love God, love each other, and the only way we can love God is by loving one another. So if you're ever driving a hot rod down the road and you see a police officer behind you with the red lights, pull over. Accept the law of the land, right? Accept the law of the land, but embrace the commandments of God. Let us grow in love and relationship with God. That is the whole purpose for the laws in the first place, to get us to a place where we fully, on a daily basis, love and grow in that relationship with God. By the way, interestingly, the reading says that those who follow the law and teach the law will be considered great in heaven. And those who do not, or teach against it, it says will be considered least in heaven. And that's intriguing to me, because even those who are teaching against the law, it says they're still going to be in heaven, but they'll just be considered least. So let us be people who are considered great in heaven because we follow, we embrace the law of God, which is to love God, love each other. Amen? All right, this is Mark Price. Thanks for listening.